Settle down, brother. The campaign to make Patrice Motsepe the next leader of the ANC and the next president of South Africa is gathering steam. We've been hearing whispers, we've been seeing reports, we've been reading think pieces over the last few months, but now it seems like it's really starting to happen. And in a moment where we've all been wondering who's going to be the next president of the African National Congress and maybe the country, in a moment where we've all been thinking Ramaphosa is really not picking a successor, in a moment where we've seen Fikile Mbalula touted, where we've seen Paul Mashatile clearly starting to campaign to be the next leader, but so much energy within the ANC going, would Mashatile be a good next call? Would he be a good next choice? He is clouded in controversy because of these ongoing security investigations into his business dealings. There was that bizarre moment where did he or didn't he suffer an attempt on his life a little while ago? And so many people within the ANC have been going, we're not sure about this guy. We're not sure whether we want this guy. And there's kind of nobody else. Would it maybe be Patrice Motsepe? Let's talk about it. Patrice Motsepe is one of South Africa's richest men, one of South Africa's most powerful men, one of the most powerful men in Africa. He runs Africa Rainbow Minerals, a mining conglomerate. He runs Africa Rainbow Capital, which has many investments and serious business power in lots and lots of industries. Patrice Motsepe is also the brother-in-law of President Cyril Ramaphosa, which seems like a pretty big deal, right? These are two men who know each other and whose families are combined. These are two men who've been friends for a very, very, very long time. These are two men who you can imagine share lots and lots of conversations about what should be happening to fix South Africa, set it right, and probably share a pretty significant vision, or at least common understanding, of what South Africa should be doing to develop the country and empower it. So there's that. Patrice Motsepe also is massive in a lot of very influential key areas of South African life that would stand him in extremely good stead to potentially get the support he needs to become the next ANC leader and president of the country. You may not know this, but he spends an enormous amount of money putting together faith gatherings. He spends an enormous amount of money getting church leaders in the same place and also traditional leaders all in the same place every single year. That is a key voting constituency across the country for many, many, many people. In fact, I'm actually going to call out exactly what he does. So through his foundation, he arranges an annual prayer session, which is held at FNB Stadium, the soccer city, 100,000 capacity, usually only filled up for Soweto derbies. He gets thousands of faith-based organizations and various denominations to go and attend, and he puts all of that together. That's very good for him in a country that is so Christian. He also has started to organize an annual event for traditional leaders from across the country. In fact, last year, the Motsepe Foundation, in partnership with African Rainbow Minerals, hosted the event that included traditional leaders such as kings, queens, and indunas from across South Africa at the Nkosi Albert Lutuli International Convention Center, the ICC. This is all like tick of all of these boxes, right? With the aim of supporting the development of traditional communities. An ANC member has also been quoted as saying that Motsepe was the first person to donate money when KZN, the Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, and Free State were hit by the natural disaster of flooding as the result of heavy rains. He has quietly been doing all the right things and all the good things. Now, I don't think that he's been doing all of this to quietly set himself up to be ANC president and leader of the country in future. Maybe he has, but I don't think so. He has been doing a lot of just building of South Africa work in ways that reflect his values over the last handful of years. And he's been getting involved. He is a God-fearing person who cares a lot about all of these different communities quite clearly, irrespective of trying to impress upon the country that he is somebody worth voting for. He is also obviously massive in something else that is very dear to South Africa, which is sport, specifically soccer. The owner of Mamelodi Sundowns, the most powerful Manchester City-like soccer club in South Africa that has been all dominant locally and very, very powerful internationally, even though they just lost the CAF Champions League final to Pyramids, controversial. But he used that to become the president of CAF, the Confederation of African Football, the organizing body of football for the whole continent. And by all reports, that has allowed him to become very powerful and well-connected amongst all different kinds of African leaders through sport and then politics and business. And by most reports, he's done an extremely good job. The reviews of his time as CAF president have been overwhelmingly glowing. Apparently, he has made it into a more financially sustainable and a better structured organization. According to insiders, he has brought a lot of money to it and a sense of professionalism that could launch African football as a whole to be more competitive and sustainable and well-run and globally competitive. All of these suggest, along with his success in his mining conglomerate and his investment arms and his foundation, that he is very good at the thing of running huge businesses, massive structures and organizations with big goals and improving them. So all of this does sound objectively very, very good when you're thinking about somebody who might become the president of a whole country one day.
Yeah, I mean, I think he put a lot of other constituencies of voters at ease as well in some ways because of his links to business as well specifically. I mean, I'm pretty sure he serves on the board of trustees for the World Economic Forum, which is massive. And also, even renewable energy wise, he's put tons of money into that. I think just last year, one of his investment arms plus Standard Bank or whatever put in like 10 billion rand.
Wow. Okay.
Together, if I think I read that correctly.
Yeah.
10 billion. It's obviously only going to happen over like 5 years or whatever. But I mean, just thinking about that and a way forward for all of our electrical woes.
Totally.
Totally huge.
He's just got like all of these tick boxes, right? So many tick boxes. But then the question, oh, by the way, one more massive tick box. It seems like he was integral to the organizing of the meeting between Trump and Ramaphosa and even the preparing for that meeting. He was part of, or at least organizing as part of a delegation of people who went to Qatar to speak to the Qataris about how to handle this meeting, because Qatar did pretty well with Trump just a little bit before. So he is deeply involved in like presidential work already and international diplomacy, which is pretty extraordinary. In fact, the Sunday Times reported that he was part of the government delegation led by Ramaphosa's envoy to the US, BC Jonas, that went to Qatar to seek advice from that country's leaders on how best to prepare for the meeting with Trump. So he's already involved from a business perspective and a political perspective. And we know that he's been in and around the African National Congress for a long time. Interestingly, we don't actually know whether he's a card-carrying member of the ANC right now, which is super important about whether or not he could become an ANC leader. But he has been around, he's been at the conferences, he's been at the meetings, he's been donating. He is stuck in to the ANC right now. So what does all of this mean? Well, it does mean, firstly, that he could become the succession plan and a very smooth succession plan for Ramaphosa if Ramaphosa chooses that he's going to make his camp, which runs the African National Congress now, line up behind Motsepe. He certainly has less of the baggage than anybody in the ANC would have. He would be seen as a clean break, but also somebody who is deeply connected to Ramaphosa and within the African National Congress world. He would not suffer any of the corruption messes that even Ramaphosa has suffered, right? Because when Ramaphosa spoke about 9 wasted years, he was the deputy president for those 9 wasted years. He was involved, okay? So, and beyond the African National Congress, what a couple of ANC insiders have been quoted as been saying, ANC sources, is that he would lend an immediate air of respectability to the African National Congress ticket that people just frankly don't believe anyone in the ANC could gather right now. Remember, Ramaphosa is far more popular than the ANC and far more electable than the ANC by all big data research, which means that the crisis of the ANC after Ramaphosa is if they only got 39-40% with him, they might go down. Way down without him come 2029. But if you bring in someone like Motsepe, who frankly, I think would be appealing to a whole bunch of people who don't vote ANC, who have been very impressed by the way that he has operated in his life, again, calling on his influence over churches and denominations, over sport, over traditional leaders. He has quietly had a very publicly successful career in a lot of ways and has spent his money on things that South Africans really care about. And I think that if Ramaphosa chose him and got behind him and the rest of Ramaphosa's minions got into line, that would be a very compelling ticket. Now, the question becomes, okay, but in the ANC, a lot of the power sits in the branches. You need branches to give their support and their votes behind a candidate. Does Motsepe have those? Arguably not, because he's not been within the ANC. But, he was nominated by a branch a few years ago.
Oh,
and
really?
then he allegedly rejected that nomination.
Oh.
But people are already thinking about it. And the latest reporting by a bunch of media is that there are strategies going on to try and convince different branches in different provinces to pick Motsepe. And the latest reports are very interesting because the 4 provinces that are being reportedly considered to lead the charge for Motsepe are big provinces in the ANC. Eastern Cape, spiritual homeland of the African National Congress, unbelievably powerful, loyal voter base. KZN, which is the second biggest voting bloc second biggest voting province bloc in the country. And KZN really needs a revival right now. So if they decide, cool, the way that we get KZN voters back is we build the next wave of the next president in KZN, makes sense. The third one that is being speculated for is Gauteng, which is the biggest voting bloc in the country by province, massively influential and important. And the fourth one is Limpopo, which is also a hardcore ANC stronghold province. These are serious provinces for the ANC's future. And if the strategy is to go to one of these provinces and say, you will lead our ticket for Motsepe, suddenly he does have branch support and suddenly he does have buy-in. And suddenly it's really interesting because remember we were reporting and speaking earlier in the year about potential sleeper agents for Zuma in the ANC. Yeah. I don't think that they could comfortably battle against the Ramaphosa team with a Motsepe wave, to be honest.
Fair.
So the key question then is, would Motsepe want to do this? He has consistently in the past resisted opportunities for himself to get involved in explicit politics. But just in the last few weeks, he's been doing interviews and talking about CAF, talking about all this, and he has steadfastly avoided rather than denied. He steadfastly said, let's not talk about that. I don't feel like let's talk about this instead, rather than explicitly denying any interest or saying that he's not going to do any of that. So it's a really interesting moment because it could turn out that none of this comes to pass, but this for the first time feels like Ramaphosa's camp slowly but surely going, this might be the guy. And that's a really big deal because Ramaphosa's camp runs the ANC. And Motsepe, when you think about what the ANC is panicking about, which is further collapse at the polls, Motsepe could in almost a Ramaphosa wave kind of way, like back in 2019, could suddenly make the ANC attractive to a whole bunch of people who've given up on the ANC who used to vote for them, and to a bunch of people, frankly, who don't usually vote or want to vote ANC, but could go, actually, that's the guy. That could be the guy. It's a really, really interesting potential timeline for South Africa's future. Let me know what you think about it. The WhatsApp line is 0607-613-436. Become a recorder, contribute to the show. Thank you so much for listening and watching.